Muhammad ibn Jabbar al-Nifarri. All the available evidence seems to indicate that he was born in the area of Nifarri in southern Iraq. He was also known as the Nili, which gave rise to the perception that he may have been an Egyptian, because the word Nili means of or from the Nile. But in reality, there's a small village in the marshes of southern Iraq called Nil. So that attribution may also mean that he's from that region. And it is very, very probable that he was born in the marshlands of southern Iraq. The whole area between a few dozens of miles south of Baghdad to what is now the access to the Gulf was all marshlands. And it was an area of intensive agriculture, but also an area of inaccessible marshes, swamps, and lagoons, to which a lot of people who, one way or another, wanted to escape the entanglement with the dunya, found themselves there. Many great walis were born and raised there, like, for example, the great Sheikh Ahmed al-Rufai, who is from the area of Bataya. So he was born in the 4th century. The 4th century Hijri was a very turbulent period in the history of Sufism, mainly because of the conflict between the Orthodoxy and the Sufis in the 3rd century Hijri, which led to the death of Hallaj. And the argument, or the charge sheet against the Sufis, was that they abandoned the Sharia in favor of inexplicable states and spiritual stations, and did not find that the Sharia was applicable to them. And this was the charge laid to them, and of course the trial of Hallaj, which was one of the most famous Sufis of the period, and the person who used the expression "Ana al-Haq," I am the truth, which got him into deep trouble, created a sense of distancing between the Sufis of the period and the general Sharia-minded orthodoxy. So a lot of these people withdrew into the marshlands and disconnected basically from society, and he's probably one of the few figures in that period who became subsequently known. As I said, there's very little known about him. He seems to have traveled a lot, went to Egypt, that's for sure. And he's probably most known in Egypt. And some of the greatest commentaries from his two famous works, al-Mawaqif, the Halting stations, and the Mukhatabat, or the speeches, were compiled in Egypt and were commented upon in Egypt, especially by some well-known mutasawwif such as Afif al-Din Tilmisani. His works seems to have been copied by his nephew, and then put in the form that we know it now by his grandson, also called Muhammad. The Mawaqif is the Kitab al-Mawaqif, which can be expressed as the book of the stations, or the book of the halting points. Mawqif is a strange term in Tasawwuf. The root word is waw, qaf, fa, waqafa. It can mean to stop, to physically stop. It can mean a point in between. It can mean even to be stopped, like being riveted, like being seized by something. And the term is used from time. It's not used copiously, but it's used by people like Ibn Arabi when he describes the meaning of waqf. Waqfa generally, in the terms of tasawwuf, means the point between two different but related states and conditions. So in the journey of the wayfarer, as one moves from one confirmed station to the next, that interface is known as the waqfa. However, Nifarri or Niffari uses it in a different context. To him, waqfa is the point at which true knowledge starts. It's not an interspace. In the path of the wayfarer, he expresses it in terms of the path of knowledge, which then leads to a kind of gnosis or ma'rifah. And then, beyond that, beyond gnosis, which is still involves a sense of duality, in the sense that there is the knower and the known. There is that point at which a person, in a true dissolution of his being, can find himself or herself, which is the point of waqfa. So, in the terms that Nifarri expresses it, it is the station where the individual is seized and no longer is able to express things in dual terms. There is no I and thou. There is no you and I. There is no creator and creation. We must be very, very careful there, because one of the reasons why Nifarri has not been taken in by most of the mutasawwifah is because of the sense that this is a station which somehow involves the merger or the hulul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once these boundaries go, it becomes a type of discourtesy to the circumstance between the individual and Allah. That is, duality must exist as long as we are sentient beings. How else can we comprehend things unless there is a juxtaposition? But Nifarri says that it no longer holds for a person who is truly dissolved in Tawheed, in the oneness of unicity. The idea that separateness can exist doesn't hold. But the waqfa, that is the station of being riveted, in my way of understanding it, is between the last step of duality, the last step of Sidrat al-Muntaha, as it were, where there is still a sense of knower and known. There is that point after which the dissolution of the individual person in the divine unity still creates a non-physical recognition of the fact. So it's not complete immersion, it's not complete freedom. There is still a consciousness of it. So it is a state of conscious unconsciousness of non-duality. Even expressing it that way doesn't really... that's probably the reasons why he didn't write it down, because the act of writing it down denies it, as it were. And that is, I think, why there is this mystery about it, this ambiguity about it. He was completely boundaryless individual. And when these utterances came, I'm sure they were recorded by those around him, but they came in the form of it's like, current that has no resistance. So it is the most that an individual can expect before the overwhelming reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to express itself. So he has divided his book, the Book of Halting Stations, into 77 mawqifs, halting points. each one of which I think is really profound. It's one of the most profound works I have ever read. And I've immersed all my life in the works of Ibn Arabi. I must say this is something else. I mean, Nifarri, I have never talked about it, simply because you have to be in a position to acknowledge that condition exists amongst certain beings, the condition of a kind of non-existent consciousness that's immersed in the divine unity. So the great spiritual architecture of Ibn Arabi, or all the other Gnostically oriented mutasawwif, in the end I think may not match the profundity of Nifarri. I cannot go any further except that there must be an acknowledgement that Nifarri was a person who was also in Sharia. So it is not a complete abolition of the boundaries, the outer boundaries. His mawaqif are those of the inner circles, the inner universe of the individual. The outer universe, his outer universe, I'm sure, was still bound by the outer terms of Islam. But he went beyond that. To use Nifarri as a kind of stepping stone into pantheism, I don't think really works, because there is not one mention, frankly, of aspects of the Sharia in the Mawaqif. There's not even a mention of any of the hadith. It is all to do with Tawheed. But his Tawheed is real because he had paid his dues. And there's no shortcut to this. So I'll start, inshallah, with what I will do is that I will go with each of the halting points. Some of the titles might be a bit odd for a modern mind, modern reader or listener. But we have to take that, I think, and try to make some sense of it. There are 77 halting points. The most important one, which summarizes the entire conception of unicity, is halting point 8. I don't know if I should start with that or not, but maybe we'll go through the chronological order, and we'll start with the first halting. Yes, my emphasis. Which he calls Mawqif al-Izz, the Mawqif of glory. I've circulated the translations made in the 1930s by Professor Arberry, later of Cambridge University, who taught in Cairo in the period. He seems to have come across it while researching the work of Tilmisani. So it's a bit of, there's all these and thous in it. It's a bit jarring. I know that Sayyid Mahmoud is trying to make it less archaic. But let's start with the Mawqif of glory. He says, I'll read it in English because I don't think many of you know the Arabic. If you want the Arabic, I can go through that too. What do you think, Sid?
English.
Mawqif al-Izz, which is the Mawqif.
We can maybe embellish it with some of the Arabic, because some of the translation is not so sensible, I don't think.
He says, none has possession of it. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to the person in that station. So it's in the form of, it's not an ihaq, it's more like an inspiration. It's not a revelatory expression. He's not trying to be prophetic. But it's a kind of inspired statement where Nifarri acts as a kind of conduit for inspired sayings that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says here, He stayed me in glory and said to me, none has possession of it save me, and it's proper to none save me. I am the glorious whose neighborhood is insupportable, and whose countenance and whose continuance is not sought. I manifested the manifest and am more manifest in it. Its nearness does not attain to me, and its existence is not guided unto me. And I concealed the inwardly and am more concealed than it. No indication of it applies to me, and no path of it leads aright into me. The way that this is, that one can comment on that, is that it is not possible to be in the hadra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We always say we want to be in the presence of Allah. We always say we want to be proximate to Him. But the might and majesty, the Mawaqif of glory of His, does not allow that. Once you approach that, your individuation as a separate being disintegrates. So trying to seek the station of proximity is really a non-starter, because if you ever get to it, you will not be there to recognize it, except through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the idea of being proximate, being in hudur, as it were, which is used a lot in people trying to be in prayer and so on. It is, when it comes down to it, an impossibility. That doesn't mean you should not aspire to it. But in order for you to recognize its true significance, your being ceases to exist if you're in that condition. So the kind of the feeling or the sense that you are somehow within the neighborhood of the sacred or the divine can only be that. It is only an expression, and probably several steps removed, rather than an expression of an actual knowledge or experience of proximity. The spiritual state of an individual approaching proximity must lead to a disintegration of his being. I am nearer to each thing than its gnosis of itself. But its gnosis of itself does not pass beyond itself to me, and it does not know me so long as itself is the object of its gnosis. So, if you say you are a ma'rifah, or that you are a Gnostic, or that you are trying to accumulate Gnostic knowledge, as soon as you use the expression I, you create a duality, implying that your gnosis, that you have a gnosis, a ma'rifah, which is simply not possible. But for me, the eyes would not have seen the visible things proper to them, and the ears would not have heard the audible thing proper to them. So, al-Sami' al-Mujib, al-Basir, which is one of Allah's names, al-Basir, the all-seer, or the Sami', the all-listener. The components of sight and sound, in their true original essence, are attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you hear and speak, as you approach the Gnostic condition, your tongue ceases to be yours anymore. And you can no longer speak in terms of the I-ness of the spiritually realized individual. Begins to dissolve. There's of course a prophetic hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when the seeker takes one step towards me, I take 10 steps towards him. And when the seeker comes within my presence, I go to his presence. And he begins to hear with my hearing, speaks with my speech, and listens with my ears. So this, in some ways, is an extension of that prophetic hadith. We move on to the next one, the Mawaqif of nearness, or the Mawaqif of Niffari. I should use the translation that Sidi Mahmoud provided, which, I don't know if you have it here, I should use it. He stood me in nearness and said to me, nothing in me is further in me than another thing. nor is anything nearer than another thing, except in my decree affirming it in nearness or farness. You know farness by nearness, and you know nearness by being. Now this is a bit paradoxical here. This is, don't forget, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to an inspired individual, inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. So his inspiration is related as to an endless cycle to the source of inspiration. So, what does Allah's nearness mean and the qurb here? And I think the idea that Allah is near to an individual, of course, is found throughout the experience of the Deen of Islam. It's in the Quran, it's in the Hadith, and there are many ayahs dealing with Allah is being nearer to you than your jugular vein. There are ayahs that when the soul comes up to the throat, and you at that time look on, though we are nearer to him than you are, but you cannot see. And there are many expressions in tasawwuf about being within the ambit, again, in the presence, through proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here the affirmation is not to confirm that there is this condition of nearness. Nearness, according to Nifarri, is only known to the Mawaqif, the person who is riveted, by the notion of being far. So you understand nearness by knowing how far you are from the divine oneness, not by having a condition of nearness that is part of that person's being. Nearness is known only when you know how far you are from the divine unity. And as you approach, as you become within the ambit of nearness, you know it by recognizing that this is the source, you're now approaching the source of being. So nearness loses the idea of being far and near. It becomes immersed, as it were, in this indescribable, spaceless, timeless sense of being. The nearness that you know and the nearness that I know is your knowledge in my knowledge. You do not know my farness, nor do you know my nearness, nor do you know my attribute as my attribute. You cannot know it, because we have symbols and reflections of it. We have isharat, we have signs about it, we have allusions of it. But you can never experience it as an emanation of the essence. So when you say you want to be generous or compassionate, you understand it very, very many steps removed from its reality as an attribute of essence. So the person in this kind of condition where he is seized by the divine unity, sees the attributes but does not in any way connect the attributes organically to their source. He cannot, or she cannot. Once you begin to assume that these attributes are somehow embodied by your actions, they no longer are attributes. You're attributing them to yourself. So if you act in a generous way, for example, or in a compassionate way, the idea that this is somehow a direct correlation with one of the circumstances or conditions of Allah's actions is in some ways a discourtesy in that particular circumstance of your life. If you're behind that, if you haven't reached the sense of being seized or riveted, then yes, you can say that I'm acting in the way of Allah as a compassionate person. But as you approach the station of dissolution, the sense that you are in any way an agent, the idea of agency itself, ceases to have meaning, because agency is defined by time and place, is defined by certain functions within that are fixed in time and place. As these boundaries go away, the idea of human beings being an agency in the realm of the unseen is just meaningless. In some ways, therefore, this is a flash here, is that Nifarri, his is the guide to the unseen. It's a guidebook to the unseen, where the idea that you can approach the unseen through the bounded self no longer has any reality or truth to it, or any veracity to it. The witness, the rememberer, or the dhakir, if he is not the truth of what he witnesses, what he remembers veils him. Again, this is to do with a person who has slipped over the edge, as it were. Where I use that metaphor sometimes. So we talked about the idea of the raindrop on the ocean. Is that once you approach the ocean of non-being, your boundedness, which is this membrane around you, is moving certainly towards dissolution. At the point of dissolution is where the waqfa is. The waqfa that he's talking about is not this raindrop coming down, and still sees itself as a self-contained autonomous entity, and therefore can somehow relate to the ocean, or at least to its source. But the waqfa is when, or the halting station is when that membrane is gone, and things are spilling out. What you think is your essence is spilling out into an ocean. So this is really, I think, this is crucial, because inshallah some of you move or are in that state, I don't know, and you move beyond the I and thou, the I and you, the duality that exists in everything, including the sense of trying to know the inner secrets of things. This seems to be a guidebook. You find me, Allah says, and do not find me. This is fondness. Just the expression, I found Allah, or that itself puts you outside. You see you, and I'm nearer to you than you're seeing. This is fondness. This is incredible. I hope I don't burn out. Move on to the next one before we burn out. Next one is called Mawaqif al-Kibriya, which is translated as Mawaqif of His Majesty. I don't think it's the correct word, Sayyid Muhammad.
No.
Kibriya is a kind of aloofness. Yes, that's better. The station of aloofness. He stayed me in his aloofness and said unto me, I am the manifest, whose manifestation does not reveal him, and I am the inwardly to the knowledge of whom the inward faculties do not attain. I'll quote Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi says, people think that the universe is the visible signs of Allah, and Allah is behind him. The reality is the opposite of that. The reality is there is no reality to the universe. All the manifestations are manifestations of Allah. So we have it upside down. It's not that the self-disclosure of Allah in the universe makes him the manifest, not the universe. That's what this means. By the way, Nifarri was maybe 200 years before. I began and created separation, and nothing was of me, nor I of it.
Then I returned and created union, in which the separated things were united and the distinct things composed. Not every servant knows my language, that it should address him. And not every servant understands my interpretation, that it should converse with him. This actually is, I think, a profound comment on those who claim to know Allah's ways. Allah's ways are known in the outer, in the Sharia. There are scholars and ulamas and learned people and just people with insights who can make truthful with a small t comments on the Sharia. But they cannot make any comments about Allah's subhanahu. They cannot say that this is Allah's ways. This is Allah's ways only when it comes to a certain outer manifestation. I am the manifest, whose manifestation does not reveal. And I am the inwardly, to the knowledge of whom the inward faculties do not attain. It makes one wonder whether all this effort is of any use. The point is, it's not meant to be of use. It's meant to be a condition. It's like you don't question your heartbeat. Your heart beats whether you want it to beat or not. You can try to control your autonomic functions. It is what happens to you as you approach this dissolution of the membrane of the rainbow. It will happen to you whether you like it or not. At the point when, as the Quran says, your vision becomes hadid, like iron, steely. But for those who want to have a knowledge of that before the time comes, and wonder on majesty, rather than be in a state of perplexity or, God forbid, fear and terror. This is what it's about. So you can't really wish that state. You will get to it either by a process of grace, let's call it that, mawhaba, or it will happen to you in time. The fourth mawqif is mawqif anta ma'na al-kawn. You are the meaning of the cosmos. Arberry says mawqif of thou is the meaning of the whole of phenomenal existence. Maybe, I think, meaning of the cosmos is probably easier on the tongue. He stayed me and said to me, thou art enduring and established. Do not regard thy enduring, for by thy regarding thou comest to thyself. Consider that which establishes you, and that which is established by me, and ye shall be saved. For you will see me and you, and when I am in a thing, I prevail. Imam Ali said, he never saw anything before seeing Allah, before it, after it, and above it. So this mawqif, this station where you see the cosmos as a veil for Allah's manifestation. Going back to what Arabi says, if you turn it on its head, you are in that mawqif, where you see everything around you as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the existing things are just puffs of smoke. When you are in that inverted spiritual condition, then you are in this, I believe you are in this mawqif where the meaning of the entire cosmos is inverted. So you don't see the signs of Allah in the cosmos. But it is the other way around, that what you see around you are just flashes of the immense reality behind it. Allah says in the Quran also, وَسَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ الْحَقُّ. This is from, I think, Surah Fussilat. So it has definite Quranic confirmation that the signs for those within the Sharia or even the Haqiqah boundedness see the signs as the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the signs of the signs, the invisible shadows, if you're interested in the shadows, are there for you to just amuse yourself when you look at them, because they're merely ways in which Allah covers His majesty. The fifth mawqif is the mawqif of my time has come. In Arabic it's mawqif qad jaa waqti. Yes, it's what it is. He stayed me and said to me, if you see me not, you exist not through me. If you see me not, you exist not through me. If you see other than me, you see me not. My indications in a thing annihilate it, in it the real reality, and establish it as belonging to God, not as existing to itself. I think this is again another expression where the core of things are basically nothing. It's just shadow. They have no essential reality. Nothing has an essential reality. And if we try to find the essential reality of things and even of meanings without referring them back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and many times in the Quran Allah says, refer the affair back to me, sometimes to the Prophet. So the affair meaning the affair of knowing, the affair of knowledge, the affair of ma'rifah, of gnosis. If we refer it back to the one, then we do not see other than him, ma siwa Allah. Which is again what Ibn Arabi later says, that the entire fulcrum of creation is poised between Allah and ma siwa Allah. What is real and what has the appearance only of reality. The sixth mawqif is the mawqif of the sea, mawqif al-Bahar. The Bahar, I suppose, here also means the ocean, which is a very significant symbol in Tasawwuf. And I think here, when he talks about the ocean, he's talking about the divine reality, the ocean, no shore, and the shore that cannot contain the ocean. He stayed me in the sea, on the ocean, and I saw the ships sinking and the planks floating. Then the planks sank also. The ship, again, is a metaphor for the individual launching himself or herself on the spiritual quest. And the plank are the components of that ship. They can also include the inner reality of the individual. So he stayed me, Allah stayed me in the sea, and I saw the ship sinking. So this attempt to reach the divine reality through Gnostic questioning or discursive knowledge or through ibadat or through prayers, in the end will sink. The whole affair will go. And even your inner reality, which is the planks, the building blocks of the ship, as it were,
they sometimes do float, i.e. they may give you some illusion that you are beginning to understand the divine reality. But then these sink too. Then the plank sank also. And he said to me, whosoever sails is not saved. He runs a risk who flings himself in and does not sail. That is true. You have to sail your boat. He perishes who sails and does not risk. So you're doomed either way. Again, back to the metaphor of the rainbow. In running a risk is a portion of delivery. The surface of the sea is an unreachable luster, and its depth an unfathomable darkness. And between the two are fishes which may not be trusted. And these are your apparently your higher qualities, the fishes not to be trusted. Again, in the path of tasawwuf, many times you are warned against aspects of yourself that you think have confirmed you or established you in the virtues or established you in the knowledge. But in reality, they turn out to be not so. Do not sail the sea, that I should veil you by means of the instrument. And do not fling yourself into it, that I should veil you by means of it. In the sea are limits. Which of them shall support you? When you give yourself to the sea and are drowned in it, you are like one of its beasts. I deceive you if I guide you to any except me. If you perish in other than me, you belong to that in which you have perished. So this is, again, I think, a reflection on the name of Allah, the Baqi, the everlasting, the ever continuous. And on one's gravestones it says, well, but that's what gives us any possibility of permanence in which the individuation of the person dissolves, but in a way that infinitely magnifies the reality of that individual. So, if you seek permanence by looking at the Baqi, the permanent, then the condition that you are promised is a condition not of being the Baqi, the constantly alive, but where your reality is magnified infinitely. This world belongs to Him whom I have turned from it, and from whom I have turned it. The next world belongs to Him towards whom I have turned it, and whom I have turned towards me. There's again an expression that the seeker is a stranger in the world. The Gnostic is a stranger in the next world. The seventh Mawaqif is the Mawaqif of compassion, which Mawaqif al-Rahmaniyya. So it's more encompassing word than Rahman. He stayed me in compassionateness and said to me, it is the quality of me alone. Allah in the Quran refers to Himself as Ar-Rahman. It is when you call upon Allah or call upon the Rahman. It is that which removes the condition of sin and knowledge and experience. Sin is not a good word. وَقَالَ لِي مَا رَفَعَ حُكْمَ الذَّنْبِ. Then I think is more like transgression. It is the quality which removes the condition of transgression and knowledge and experience. So long as any trace of contrariety remains, it is a mercy. And so long as no trace of it remains, it is a compassionateness. This is, again, I think, not a play, but a reflection on the words Rahman and Rahim, where Rahim is specific to the individual, and Rahman is an overarching, over-encompassing term, which both of them, Rahim and Rahman, are part of the Rahmani of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you see me, follow me. And though I have turned away from you the faces of all, yet will I turn them humbly towards you. When you see me, turn away from those who turn from you and advance towards you. When you see me, assist me. But he cannot assist me who does not see me. When you cannot be veiled from me, then have I declared thee to be my, here he says lieutenant, but I think better my regent. Put on your seal which I have given you, wherewith to seal every heart that yearns with yearning, and every heart that shrinks with shrinking. So shall you possess and not be possessed, confine and not be confined. Whosoever is absent from me and sees my knowledge, him I have appointed my regent over his knowledge, his particular knowledge. And whosoever sees me and is absent from my knowledge, him have I appointed my regent over his vision. So, if you are dazzled or riveted or fixed by the divine reality, knowledge itself becomes, your knowledge of that becomes really immaterial to your condition. So you no longer give it any value. There's no value. There's no sense of worth to it. And whosoever sees me and is absent from my knowledge in the sense of the limited knowledge that we think of as knowledge in this world, so him I have appointed my regent over his own vision. So that vision is true, where you transcend all earthly or sentient or emotional or psychological or even inward circumstance. The last mawqif which we'll discuss today, you have time? Is the mawqif of staying, which is a very long one. It's about 21 different, it's about 18 different, what am I saying? 106 different conjunctions. But this, if you want to read anything that will give you a kind of summary, understanding of the Nifarri, this is the one to read. By the way, just for those who are interested in the classics of Islamic spirituality or tasawwuf, this is normally the case. For example, in the Futuhat Makkiyah of Ibn Arabi, the whole thing is encompassed in chapter 73. So if you want to just read one thing, just read that, because it has really the whole thing. But it's a very long chapter, so but it's easier than reading 40 volumes or whatever. So the mawqif of staying with this 106 conjunctions, I'll not go through them one by one.
What's the Arabic for this one?
Waqf, mawqif al-waqf. I will try to do it thematically, unless Sayyid Mahmoud would like to comment. By the way, a lot of what Nifarri says, although it's unique to him, in its own way, it's found in the outer edges of most of the great spiritual traditions of mankind. I mean, if anybody's read Meister Eckhart, it has some elements of that. But in the Islamic tradition itself, I think that pathway has been not really followed, because it's so immersed in the realm of the unseen and does not appear to be anchored in Sharia. So later, subsequent masters, apart from Ibn Arabi, but even Jalaluddin Rumi, made their sayings more accessible, or especially more accessible to the public. And the words of the kind of spiritual eruptions of Nifarri were contained and molded. In the case of Ibn Arabi, more in an intellectual framework. In the case of Rumi, I'm sure you know more about than I do. More in the expressions of love and ecstatic love, and more also in ways that people can relate to, both at the individual level and the Sharia level and so on. This is in a very raw and stark form. And apart from, I think, Tilmisani, there has been no serious attempt to bring Nifarri into the mainstream of Islamic spiritual thought. Maybe the time has come for it. I think the time has come, because I think it's a perfect antidote, perfect antidote to the kind of madness we see around us, where aspects of the Sharia, distorted, become the defining features of not only Islam, but of the doorways to the unseen, which they're not meant to be that. And one of my litmus tests is, as to the quality of a person's spiritual insights, is whether Ibn Taymiyyah hated him or not. And in this case, he hated him no end. And he also hated Tilmisani no end. So, for me, this is an indication of the quality of the spiritual state. Let me just go through these, one or two of these utterances. Whosoever stays through me, him I clothe in adornment, and he sees no adornment in anything. If any attraction of otherness remains for you, you stay as naught. Staying is the source of knowledge. Whosoever stays, his knowledge is within himself. This, I'm afraid, was written in the 1930s, so I suppose himself is universal, herself too. But whosoever stays not, his knowledge is with other than himself. Staying is a luminousness, making known the values and effacing the thoughts. Staying is the fire of otherness. If I consume otherness with it, it is well. If not, I consume you with it. It's Allah speaking to the stayer. When you know staying.
This translation is a little bit.
Oh.
Well, here's what it says. وقال لي الوقفة نار السور فإن أحرقته بها وإلا أحرقتك به أحرقتك به.
If not, I will consume you alongside it. No, I will consume you by it.
Well, maybe this way. How about this way? The standing is the fire of otherness. it either burns the otherness, I either burn the otherness with it, or you will be burned by the otherness.
By it, not with it, yes, by it. You're right. Sorry, do my own translation. And you translated waqf as staying, or as...
Yeah, staying.
In staying, there is neither establishment nor annihilation, nor speech, nor act, nor knowledge, nor ignorance. It's beyond all the sense of usage. Staying has intelligence of every knowledge, but no knowledge has intelligence of it. Staying sets free from the slavery of this world and the next. Prayer rejoices in the stayer, even as the journeyer rejoices in prayer. This is probably the only ibadah that Nifarri talks about time and time again in the Mawaqif. That is salat. Salat as the essential link, absolutely essential link in this process. So the act of prostration and yielding to the total reality is a condition of staying. It is again a kind of autonomic response of this there, because it is the constant acknowledgement through effacing the self in the act of prostration is the negation of the I. And as the I retreats, the you becomes overwhelming until it overwhelms the I. And I think this is again probably an expression of the prophetic saying that the joy that he has is the coolness of the I, the salat. The salat, whether it is the ritual salat or the ones that you understand as a conventional salat in Islam, or whether it's a kind of essential salat, is really immaterial for the stayer. For that person who has reached the edge or beyond the edge, this is whom the Quran speaks about in Salatihim Da'imun. They are in permanent state of yielding to the one reality. Now, if you're in that particular condition, whether you repeat the constant cycles of prayer physically or not, is really beside the point. And according to one of the Mawaqif, this is no longer valid. So, in the map of the other world, of Alam al-Ghayb, the salat that is of a permanent universal nature is the established condition of the stayer, of the muwaqqaf. If the heart of the stayer were an otherness, he would not stay. If otherness were in it, he would not persist. So, again, there cannot be two places in the heart for the true Arif, definitely. But the true Gnostic would say there's only one place, there's only one presence in my heart. But when he says there's only one presence in my heart, he is not a waqif anymore. He ceases to be the person who is effaced, completely effaced. The effacement of the person that whom Nifarri is talking about must be total for this dialogue to take place with and between reality and the disappearing shadow of otherness. The stayer sees knowledge, how it destroys the thing known. He is not partitioned by any existing thing, nor inclined by any contemplated thing. Whosoever stays not, sees the thing known,
but sees not knowledge. He is veiled by wakefulness, even as he is veiled by heedlessness. This is, I think, aimed at those who worship their knowledge, who think that their knowledge has allowed them, has afforded them the access to the unseen. This, I think, is very important right now. Staying is the spirit of gnosis. Gnosis is the spirit of knowledge. And knowledge is the spirit of life. Every stare is a Gnostic. Not every Gnostic is a stare. The stares are my people. The Gnostics are the people of my gnosis. So the stare, he's not in a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the relationship no longer exists. There's no binary condition here anymore. There's no barzakhi, as it were. There's no more intermediate state. But the Gnostic who has intellectual, emotional, even spiritual knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a relationship to Allah through the name of the knower, al-Alim, for example. The stare's relationship, quote unquote, there's no relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is no longer through any of the names, no longer through the attributes. It is a dissolution of being. Staying banishes all beside it, even as knowledge banishes ignorance. Patience is set above everything except staying. Staying is set above patience. Why patience? I think it's to do with the suspension of time. Absolute patience is where time has no effect on your condition. When you say I'm patient with something, it means that you are prepared to bear with something for a certain length of time, or for an inordinate length of time. But if time does not feature, you are infinitely patient. So the stayer has to eliminate the effects of time on his or her circumstance. We're talking about hadra here. Here's one. Staying is my neighborhood, and I'm other than the neighborhood. Neighborhood, I suppose, means hadra here. So it is that the condition of the stayer is within the hadra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not confined by presence or hadra. Knowledge guides not to gnosis, and gnosis guides not to staying, and staying guides not to me. The knower is in slavery to his knowledge. The Gnostic has contracted for his freedom. The stayer is free. This is really, again, a very important word, because hur is hardly ever used in the Quran. And when it's used in juxtaposition to being a slave. And if you notice, a great deal of Islamic thought, modern thought, political thought, really does not talk about freedom. It's more to do with rights and duties and so on, but not about freedom. Because the implicit assumption that no one is free except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is no one, no thing. But the stayer seeks the freedom of being unbounded. The unboundedness, to overuse the metaphor of the rainbow, when it loses its membrane, it's exactly that sense that you have. At that point where it breaks and you spill out into a boundless ocean, this is absolute freedom. think I will stop here because each one of these utterances is really very, very profound. And one can go on for hours on them. I strongly urge you to read Mawaqif 8 before our next gathering, inshallah, because it condenses the entire book, and also it's very, very, very short sentences. They're very pithy and dense and full of meaning. I'll stop to you. Would you like to take over? No.
Do we have some time maybe for questions?
Yes, we have to.
Actually, I did not understand what it said. If you could explain.
State is the idea of waqfa. Were you here at the beginning? Or when I spoke
No,
about
I'm
it?
not.
Okay. Waqfa is the root of the word means to be in a place, to stop in a place, to halt in a place. And in Sufi terms, it is used as a kind of intermediary position between one condition and the next. In this particular instance, it is Nifarri talks about staying as a person, individual who is basically it's a condition that goes beyond the various cycles of spiritual advancement. It's outside of that range. It's a condition where a person is fixated and is, I use the term riveted, that it's like something seizes you and anchors you, and you just sit there motionless. And that's what the stare refers to. A person in that anchored, fixated position.
You said seeker is a stranger in this world. The gnosis is a stranger in the other world.
Yes.
It didn't make sense to me.
Well, the seeker, a person who seeks spiritual knowledge in this world, he sees the world around him as alien. He sees that he or she does not belong to this world. So, alienation of a seeker from the material environment, from the physical environment, is something that is felt, I think, by most people on this path. Somehow you feel that the world. Now, the Gnostic, a person who knows that ultimately the entire affair belongs to Allah anyway. The afterworld, he or she do not see this as the end of reality. Reality does not end in the afterworld. So the person who goes beyond the notion that the world is an alien place and human beings are basically nasty and brutish, and what the spiritual path is countered by the denseness and the evil of this world. Not evil, but the lack of light in this world. That's why a seeker sees the world as a stranger. The Gnostic, who is intellectually and spiritually or emotionally aware that there is another reality, the reality of the afterworld, that person also knows that beyond that reality of Jannah, or beyond of recompense, of reward, and so on, there is another much greater reality. And that person does not see the next world again bounded. So, to the Gnostic, the true Gnostic, the next world is also a station to something else. And again, there's Quranic justification. Ashab al-Maimana.
Maybe a way to understand that too is to say the strangeness in the sense of not belonging to, or not being of this.
Yes.
Right?
If we were to accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Is that because they've reached a stage? Are you saying that one has to reach a stage of complete unawareness of the self, non-cognizant, non-self-cognizance, in the sense that you become utterly, totally and completely possessed by the divine, so that you have no knowledge of anything. In fact, that you say that you can't really have knowledge because you become a slave to that knowledge. So, are you saying that such figures as Mazhar, Khalaj, Bistani have reached the stage where they had no knowledge, no sense of cognizant being or existence, and in fact they're totally vacant, so that it's Allah who speaks through them, so they are in effect nothing, just empty shells. Is that the point that Nifarri is making?
No, I mean, Nifarri is not, he's saying the two different things. He's not denying the corporeality of human beings. He's talking about the inner world, the inner realities. You can be a person who goes to the office and do whatever you do, or you can be a traveler, or you can be a student, or you can be anything in the outer forms, and maintain the outer courtesies, and including aspects of professionalism, of knowledge, and so on. That's something else. The inner realities, though, which is what we are all here for, and we're here not for it's nothing to do with the outer forms in which we conduct ourselves. You're here because one is here because you want to express, feel, relate to an inner reality which in turn reflects the world and the unseen. This is what he's saying. The barriers that exist within the individual, that even at the highest point of realization, still has an element of it, of I-ness. That cannot be the approximation of reality. That has to go. So when Mansour Halaj says, Ana al-Haq, and when Bastami answered, he said, who is there? And he says, you and I, and it went on. It's not to do with the way that they conducted themselves. A person who sees inwardly and outwardly is a majdoub, a person who has no control over his physical functions or his intellectual functions. This is not, Nifarri is not a majdoub. He may be, I don't know, but I don't think he was one. He's not a person who sees in the outer form. If he sees in the outer form, he would probably not go traveling. He would not go on trying to place himself in circumstances and conditions where his outer knowledge can be perfected. But his inner reality is another matter. And it is the way into the unseen is not through the intellect, is not through outer forms of prayer, is not through outer knowledge. It is through the dissolution of the sense of I-ness. So I think yes, Halaj was a carder, he had a profession. Halaj in Arabic means a wool carder. So if you didn't card wool well, I don't think anybody would have gone to him. You didn't have a way to live. So many of these people had a profession, they had a trade, they had a craft. I don't know what Nifarri's was, but we don't know. But I assume he had a trade, did something, a cattle dealer or something. So you can maintain and do your best, probably. I'm sure Halaj was a very good carter. But the inner barriers, that is the map of inner sight that allows you to see the universe and the unseen. One of its preconditions is dissolution, not of self as a
as sort of, but self ma siwa Allah, that is other than Allah. When you stop seeing your inner being as having a reality that is independent, when you know that you're contingent and your existence is contingent, then I think it becomes what these people reached. I think that kind of condition. This, of course, is a condition of the Prophet ﷺ, where there was no boundedness in his inner life, and I think that condition can be approximated by others. It was.
That involves a striving, an effort, doesn't it?
Not really.
Because you spoke in terms of passiveness, where it will happen to you.
It will happen to you at the point of death. I mean, at the point of death, your individuality ceases, and your sense of being an autonomous entity dissolves, whether you like it or not. So when I say that you should try to reach that condition, it's only because I personally would like to know what's going to happen if I can now rather than then. So this is but I know it's not going to be achieved by constant exertions. It's time plays a part in it. All kinds of things begin to overwhelm you with the reality of oneness, so that your I-ness retreats with time, maybe even without time. So if you're one of those lucky enough where your inner I-ness becomes shrunken, then you don't need to exert yourself. You may exert yourself and then something pops and it will be fantastic. But I don't think there's a linear relationship between exertion and spiritual insights. And I don't think there's really a relationship between spiritual insights and dissolution of I-ness. You can be very insightful spiritually and still be a big egotist.
Is that a gift, this spiritual insight? Is that a gift that is given to certain people? You're saying, well, you can't strive, so you can't acquire it.
No, I'm not saying you won't acquire it. I cannot guarantee you acquire it. It's not a matter. And whoever guarantees you, I don't know what you've been told, but there's no guarantee to this. It's just a recognition that comes onto one.
But you still have to strive towards.
No, not really. I mean, it can come. It can come on the number 9 bus all of a sudden.
So what would make it come by you not striving?
It's like an inspiration.
Yes, because there is and I know, there's an element of universality inside you. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. That is what inspires you, not yourself. I mean, we all know that there is a spark of the unseen inside you. Otherwise, who's doing all the talking? I mean, I'm not here to build.
Is that like your subconscious kind of mind?
Yeah, if you want to be Freudian about it, yes, but this has nothing to do with the subconscious mind, because ultimately the subconscious mind can be mapped out neurologically and psychologically, and impulses and all of that, and memories and computers and robots and automatons and all of that. No, these are not the source of life. What exists in you is, for the lack of a better word, is the soul. And that keeps on questioning, that keeps on trying to break out of its confinement. So you can teach yourself through exertion to speak to your soul. And in the process, hope that the soul overwhelms yourself. But the self has all kinds of very, very nasty tricks up its sleeves. And they don't always, it's not always successful. But what makes you awake in the number 9 bus is, suddenly springs to attention, is the soul. And the soul is the element. We say, as a matter of fact, it's the element from the unseen. No, it's that you know there is something in there that is beyond measure. So it is that is what I think gives you the possibility of an opening.
So the soul can play good tricks and bad tricks?
The soul cannot play only good tricks. It has no tricks. The self has tricks. The self has tricks. The soul has no tricks. The soul is just a spark from the unseen. Emanates you.
So the soul is the one who keeps you awake?
No, the soul is one that it knows that it's in a strange place and doesn't like it here, and keeps on asking, what is beyond? What will happen? How did I come into being? Why am I here?
But sometimes giving you time to really wake up.
Yes.
Stop it to sleep
Yes.
at all.
It does. But the self usually keeps you awake, not the soul. The soul doesn't. It's just there. It's a spark of being.
Even both, basically.
Well, you don't need both. You have both. I mean, you have a self, which is all the imprint that you have. That is biological. That is genetical. That is affected by environment and so on, and by custom, by whatever, and has various grades and various levels and various forms. And then there is something else, which is, as the Quran says, in Arabi, it's from a different order of creation, different order of being. Now, you say we all have the divine spark. We're not all able to do, we don't encompass divinity, of course not. But you have within you the elements that allow you to recognize the existence of a far greater, well, not far greater, but an infinitely greater being. And this is what keeps the self agitated. Because the self wants to mimic the soul. The soul has in it permanence. So the self wants to be permanent, wants to continue living forever. The soul has in it elements of I don't know, the essence of generosity. So the self wants to be generous too. Like the soul has the essence of mercy. So you want to be compassionate from time to time, and so on. The soul has also in it essence of justice, of recompense. So sometimes you want to take the volunteer on that. But the self mimics this. And as the self begins to recognize that it's limited by duration, and its energies are sapped with time, it begins to become more and more jumpy. And in the process, the soul just sitting there waiting to be reclaimed. And they seize it, and the self sees the soul, and says, well, this thing is going to be it. How can I be like it? How can I jump with it? I think it's classic.
Because some speakers use the term soul and ego or self interchangeably. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the soul is maybe a different word for it, is spirit, and the self is a different word for it, is ego. The self in the Quran is, when I speak about the self, I speak about, the commanding self, the inspired self, the self that is content, the self that seeks contentment.
You mean the spirit?
No, the self. Yeah. The self is what you think you are. This is what you are. The soul is really the life force, if you want to call it that, the enabling environment for that, the eternal base for that. So the self has various, when you say, I don't know, I did that, well, it wasn't me who did that. It has a spectrum of characteristics. It has a very terrible side to it, which is the animal self, the bestial self, the selfish self, the inconsiderate self, the monstrous self. And then it moves on as it becomes more and more soul-like. Then, the Quran has 5 different kinds of self, I'm sure you know. This is the five different archetypes. There is the lowest self, which is called the commanding self. Then there is the self that begins to question what it's doing, nafs al-lawama. Then there is the inspired self. Once it stops questioning itself, begins to be inspired, but mainly through the agents of the divine in you, which is the soul. And then it becomes a self that wants to please and wants to be at ease and tranquility and so on. Does not want to cause mischief, does not want to cause harm. And then the last kind of self is mardiya, one which others, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. So it's a spectrum. I mean, there are 5 in the Quran, probably the 5 can be 50. So the psychology of tasawwuf is infinitely superior to what you learn in the universities here. Against that, not against that, but alongside that, there is something that is there from the unseen. You cannot know it except by removing all the muck that exists between you and it. And when you get to that point, then you are one of the waqif. Become a stair.
You can have us right there.
I was hoping you would help me. No, this is something that we all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For this great gift.
Is that a book one can get access to?
It's out of print, actually, but it's.